Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stand Up Speakeasy. I'm your host, Rethne, and every episode I bring a comic from all over the country, and we talk about their comedy journey so far. And without further ado, she's currently living the van life, and I can't wait to pursue that van life soon. Because I plan on getting my own van and touring the country as well, because I'm a Capricorn, and it'd be pretty dope to tour the country that way, just like Arielle Isaac Norman. And without further ado, here's Arielle Isaac Norman. How are ya?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for being my guest. It's pretty awesome. I like your background there. It reminds me of Colorado, where I'm from, so it's pretty dope.
Yeah. Well, I'm in California right now, and this is my girlfriend's childhood home. And I think at one point this was her childhood bedroom. So you can see some trophies.
Awesome. I wasn't much of an I wasn't much of an athlete. I tried karate once, and then I got my butt kicked, and I was like, no more sports. I'm done. But PE was fine. That was about it. Awesome. So, how's the van life treating you?
It's great. I feel like I've been on a spiritual adventure, which I realized, I think that was the biggest component. I mean, I love traveling around the country for comedy. I've done it out of a car before, but this was the kind of thing where it's like, well, we can really be out there for a long time without having to make much money. Because, we just kind of like we both worked throughout the year last year and then just quit our jobs, but we've, saved up money so that we wouldn't have to worry about it too much. I have little ways to make money through stand-up and podcast and writing and whatnot, like some consultation I do on the road, but mostly we just keep our bills low. So being able to live that way, like in nature without having to worry about the grind of whether it's money and stand up or anything, like to just be able to get away from that and like clear the cookies in my head, the cash, it's been really nice. And I'm still a human with my flaws, and like I'm still crazy. I'm still narcissistic and self-conscious, but I think I've been chipping away at that and I'm clawing my way inch by inch, but I'm definitely getting there in terms of just being able to have a clear enough mind so that I can keep my heart open.
Indeed, most definitely. And wow, it's pretty cool to hear that someone that's where I want to be in a van life is pretty awesome. I have a Honda Accord at the moment, and just gives me great gas mileage.
Yeah, I had the Civic.
Nice.
Well, and I mean, the only reason I can do this like kind of like wholesale van life, because I would have loved to have done that, but it's only because my girlfriend actually has the skills and know how, because neither of us has the money to be like, let's just buy one. People are paying like $45,000 plus just to even start, but for us, we spent, because her car got totaled because some idiot hit it. But thankfully he did give us his phone number, his insurance. But so she got a little bit of money from that. And then we bought a 2010 Ford Transit Connect that is a little bit slightly bigger than most of the Transit Connects you see out there, but still very small. So we're able to get like 25 miles to the gallon though. But we paid $6,500 for it, $7,000 for it, something like that, and have put $1,000+ maybe, well, because you have to buy the lithium battery and the solar panels. I mean, you don't have to buy the solar panels, but we did, and put in a fan, and then some kind of mini fridge, and that can all be solar panel. But my girlfriend built a custom bed that pulls out, custom shelving. She's putting in, that's part of why we've come back to California, so she could spend a week at her father's like garage, making tweaks to the van, but it's all stuff she's done herself. So it's only because I have a girlfriend with those skills that like we can do this, and we can do it on a budget that we could pay for. She's a baker, and I worked at Juice Land, like a smoothie shop in Austin, and doing stand up and whatever. But it's not like I make that much money from that. But it's people. If anyone's wondering if you can do this, you can do this. You can do this making service industry money. But only if you have a girlfriend who has those skills, or if you do. I mean, I don't even know like how impressive, to me, it's just so impressive. Like I can't do anything, but she can imagine how a shelf, would come down out of a door, and then she can draw it on a thing. And then we go to Home Depot and she buys, I mean, I hold things for her while she drills. That's all I can do. And then she usually has to be like, no, hold it there, because I have no idea. Like the physical universes, I just have nothing. So
Same here. Like I'm really good at the technical stuff, but like when it
that's
comes to like
good.
building stuff, nah, I forget about it. But I used to live in California myself. I lived in
Uh,
Sherman Oaks,
oh,
and
cool. Hmm.
yeah, I love that place. My rent was like $9.95 for a one bedroom, one bath, but
Yeah.
it was a good life for
I
sure.
mean, that's Austin prices too now. So, you know.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
wild. And mentioned that you had a podcast, and you have two of them, Gender Fluids and Make America Get Along Again. And how did you come up with those names and all that good stuff?
Make America great at getting along again. I mean, it's funny. Yeah. Well, yeah. The American experiment was how can we get along despite not having a shared, ethno-religious background. So that's actually, yeah, the idea of us getting along great again is. Sorry. Let me get. There's so much I want to say. But I do have one podcast called Gender Fluids, and that is a podcast I do with a trans chick who's also an Austin-based comic, and we just talk about sex and gender and kinks and fetishes. It's very fun. I love doing it because it's just such a delight to talk to her. Our minds both have really dark senses of humor and are very irreverent. So we just love talking about this. If we can find a taboo subject, we will find a way to make it the most taboo way anyone has ever talked about the subject. And so that is a lot of fun. And that comes out every other Wednesday now. It was every Wednesday for a long time. But now that I'm on the road, we've found, it's like, let's give ourselves an easier time. But she's always done such a great job with the sound quality. My partner on that, Ava Smart. And so she continues to make it. I don't even think you would realize that I'm doing this from van life and not in person. Like she does such a good job on that. So that's really good. And if anyone needs another podcast in your life and you aren't listening with children around, or you want your children to be really interesting, then Gender Fluids, it's available everywhere. And then Make America Get Along Again. I have not been as good about putting those episodes out because I've just found I've been trying to figure out a producer editor to work with, and there's been some back and forth on people helping me with that. And I think I'm on the verge of getting an episode out and finding a real consistent editor, because I have already great conversations in the bank, and I have a bunch of plans and people I'm gonna talk to for it. But the whole idea, so you have to search for MAGA, MAGAA, and that stands for Make America Get Along Again. And my idea, and I feel like the tides have turned on this, but everyone knows that our society, our country is extremely polarized. Everyone I know bemoans that, and when I talk to people, especially in person and not online, or in a one-to-one online, it always turns out we have so much more in common than anyone would have thought based on our demographics. Interestingly enough, whether those demographics are, usually I mean more about like political party, or whether you're urban or rural versus like everyone knows that people of various races and genders and sexes and sexualities and whatnot have in common. But it's like people of religious and very religious people have a lot more in common than some people think, and liberals and Democrats or conservatives, whatever, And so, but the social media landscape and the corporate media attention bait, the whores that those people are, the incentives are all to get us outraged at each other, to get us distracted by the things that we don't have in common. And it's just gotten to a point of ridiculousness. And I can only do so much in my stand up to talk to crowds at a time to get them to be like, well, that one's cool. That one has some ideas that are different, but then they go right back on. And so we just need more and more voices, reaching as many people as possible, realizing, no, most people are sane. Don't believe the hype. Most people just want us all to figure out how to live in harmony and abundance with each other. The best way that we can do that, we might have different ideas about what that'll look like, different ideas about how to get there. But let's focus on the things that we do have in common, because we have some real problems that are more urgent facing us, especially when it comes to the nature, what we're doing with nature and our ability to thrive in this on this planet.
Indeed, most definitely. And I made sure to put gender fluids and MAGA on the description box below. So feel free to go there and subscribe and give them all like 5 stars if they have the rate review system and all that good stuff.
Yes.
And I love gender fluids topics because like my buddies coined me the dirtiest or the cleanest dirtiest comic in Daytona Beach
Yeah.
because I say all these really bad things and I don't use any curse words and
Yeah.
like I ask people, do you guys know any of this stuff? And they're like, no, please explain. And so I have to
Mhm.
explain to them, and it's so much fun.
It is so much fun. I know, it's just so much fun to talk about bodies and sex to people. Every people are so afraid of those topics or something. It's like, but guys, they're the most entertaining ones. Let's talk about it. This is great. Like for the first time in history, or for the first time in a long time, women especially can talk about our bodies in a way that like it's just, you just weren't allowed to, and self-policed as well. And now I'm like, guys, like let's all, how is anyone not, like the idea of like how are all women comics not constantly talking about our periods? Like I feel like it was like groundbreaking to people that I'll do a 20-minute set just all period jokes, and then men love it, uh, as well as women, and like people act like this crazy thing, and I'm like, dude, it's 2020. I mean, it was, or at the time, I started doing it, like maybe 2016 or something like that. But like, how have this is so easy. It feels like it's just like shooting fish in a barrel to write these jokes because they haven't been done. You just feel like George Carlin out there, covering new ground on being like, hey, here's some stuff we've never said out loud. But it's like, how is no one? Come on, guys, this is hilarious. There's blood coming out of us, and we're throwing shit in. All the different stuff that we plop into our vaginas in order to deal with this. It's inherently so easy to make funny, and I'm like. And yet you still see so many people not making it funny, but it's not
Most
everybody's. Yeah.
and so you're part of an upcoming web series called Van Damme, John and Claude, and I love the name because I was a huge, fan of like Lionheart and a bunch of those John Claude Van Damme movies. And how did that all come about?
Well, just because Colton Dowling is this really funny character that we've got in Austin. He moved there a few years ago, and he just produces all these like shows and podcasts now and live podcast. He's just like, he loves producing things, and he's great at it. And so he wanted to make a web series slash, who knows, the possibilities for the future. He was doing a bit for a long time, and I really actually don't know what like the chicken and the egg of this all, because he was doing a bit online or on stage about that he'd adopted this kid with his gay lover, and like was talking about, it was so ridiculous. And then one day he's like, hey, yeah, me and these other comics like have been writing the script of this show where I'm a gay dude who adopts this this conservative little boy. And do you want to, it was like, do you want to play the conservative little boy? And I'm like, yes, I want to play a 10-year-old conservative, like orphan, like my conservative parents got killed in a car accident or something, and I'm 10, and somehow this gay dude, I think maybe Colton's character's gay husband was my uncle or something like that. And so here I get to play this little boy who gets adopted by gay men, one of whom is quite fabulous and ridiculously so, Colton. So it's fun because we can then, the idea, and I'm sure, like, I think everyone who's working on the project, even though we're all like basically liberals in Austin, I guess, but we're all comics. And so we all just have that sensibility of, like Chris Rock's thing. I got some shit I'm liberal about, got some shit I'm conservative about. Like, I think that speaks to most comics, or at least the ones that I tend to find funny. Where we want to question stuff and look at things from different angles and make fun of the excesses of all sides of things. And so this gives us a lot of room to play with. And here we are in Austin, Texas, which some people think of that as like, we may as well be Portland. But those of us who live there understand that there's a complication to our, we're a blue city in the sea of red. And it's like, no, we're a purple city. And please, as everyone moves there, don't ruin the purple thing that we've got going on, because it's all about, we can have red, we can have blue, we can have purple, but we all in Austin and in Texas should part of our culture that I want people to assimilate to is that we all respect each other and we understand that we can have differences and we can all get along on just the fact that we all love barbecue or vegan barbecue at this point, but that there's just it's more important to be nice. And that if you want to get anywhere with convincing anyone of anything, let's start by loving each other and having a foundation of respect. And so there's a purpleness and there's a kind of hidden secret that again, some people around the country might not realize, but it's even people now who moved to Austin might not realize, the interlopers, like, okay, you can come here, but you need to understand, not everybody's as liberal in the same way you think. Not everybody believes all the same shit, and you need to be okay with that. And so, just this show where we get to explore the excesses of a gay dude and the excesses of a conservative little boy. And like, I think what we can look at with that is, that's why I wanted to work in that project, not just to get to play a 10-year-old little boy, which is a dream of mine that I didn't even realize I had, but that's my gender expression is 10-year-old boy. And so I get to be myself for the first time in my life, playing little Jean-Claude.
Awesome. Good stuff. And I love acting. I was in a couple of short films, and it's just 98% of it was improvised and 2% of it was scripted. And you can hear, because like you can hear the pages turn because people were reading because we couldn't memorize their lines.
Oh, you gotta edit that out. Yeah, I mean, I've been in some shorts before, a couple little commercials too, I guess, but I've been in some shorts, but it's mostly just like people hire me to play a lesbian and like make out with another woman, which I'm always fine with doing that. If anyone has any acting gigs where they want me to come make out with a hot woman, hot to me, then I'm down. But I didn't realize until someone asked that I also very much wanted to play a 10-year-old boy. So
Indeed.
Those are my two preferred roles.
And speaking of, what are some of your favorite other short films that you were a part of?
So I was in this producer, director, writer, Joy Lynn had me in a couple of films. One was called First Dates with a Comedian. And she goes on like a series of dates with 4 or 5 dudes who are all just kind of douchebags in various ways or losers in various ways. And then at the end, I pop on and I'm like charming and funny, and then we make out. And then it's cute. It was like for a contest because it was everything had to be done in one take. It was one of those one shot. It was like a one shot thing. And so the way that it was really convoluted, and she had to be, really creative to do this, to pull it off, because you would have it kind of in that Mrs. Doubtfire way. You'd have snippets of each of our dates, but she would cut back and forth between. It was like you'd see the first date, and then you'd see the second date, and the third, and then the fourth, and then you'd see some from the first, and then the second again. And so like these people had to like duck out of the camera and like run around and leave, and then the other guy get in there, because it all had to be one take. And so it was really cool the way she just like circles the camera and does this. But I had the easiest part because it was only I didn't have to duck around or anything. I just sat there, we made out. So it's really my wheelhouse. And then there was another one called Anticipation, and it was like this chick who the twist at the end is that you realize that my character is actually dead, but it's basically just like this hot chick who's remembering me, who and I like died in the military or something, but most of it is just like us making out and touching each other. So
rad. And I when you mentioned one shot of filming, it reminded me of like Tony Hinchcliffe's one shot when he was like filming his special at the Ice House. And it's like, man, that's so cool just to see that the camera just move around them and stuff. And you were also an Olive hater on Food Network's Hated or Plated. And what was that experience like, being on the Food Network?
It was fun. I mean, it was a real acting job for me because I as I told him, like, I hated olives as a kid because my mom only got those like shitty canned black ones. But, I'm a gourmand now. I'm a foodie. Like, I love good olives. And so I did actually have to kind of pretend to not like olives in general still. But the other thing is like the chef that they had, don't tell anyone, but the chef that they had, like he just wasn't that good. I don't know. Like I'm like, okay, if I did still hate olives, this dish you prepared for me wouldn't have been the one to convince me to like olives. But also because we're filming this stupid thing, like instead of it being authentic, I shouldn't say stupid anyway. Hopefully no one from the Food Network or someone else is gonna watch this. But it's like because it's just the nature of the ways they shoot these things. So like when I'm supposed to be taking a bite into corn, this nice corn that this guy's made with this garnishes and these cheese and whatever, and little bits of olive that's supposed to like convert me to liking olives. By the time we're shooting the shot where I actually get to take a bite, it's cold, you know? It's like, it looks like, oh yeah, we just got this out of the oven. And then but you know, in reality, I'm supposed to be like, and it's like, they wanted me to be like quasi acting, quasi not acting, like to actually give my true opinion. They were like, it's okay, whatever you think about the olives. But it was like, they would kind of make it sound like they really wanted me to ultimately like them. And I don't know. So every time I do any kind of acting gig, it just feels like, I don't know, like, what are we doing? Like, it depends on your director and how, but a lot of people, they just don't want to give you that much direction. Have you ever been on a commercial audition?
Oh, never. I'm too shy for that stuff. I'm the behind the scenes kind of person.
It's
Like,
just, yeah, which is like that is a better way to go in life. Because I mean, I might be too shy for it too. I mean, I just get in there and it just, things feel so like dorky and unnatural, then it's hard for me to like method act whatever they're telling me. But I'm like, I don't know what you're like. Okay, so the first audition I ever went on, the instruction was like, walk around in the park pretending that you're giving donuts to children or strangers. And I'm like, okay, I don't like, can you tell me my motivation for giving donut? Is it like, do I work for a donut company and like it's free donut day? I'm like, I'm an adult who's like going up to children in the park, giving them donuts. I don't know what kind of facial expression to make unless you give me a backstory. But it's like, if you ask them, they get weird. And I'm like, it just feels like a trick all the time. You're like, so am I supposed to read your mind, or do I ask, or is it weird to ask? Because the truth is, what they want is you to smile. Most of these, like, the truth is, all they want is for you to just be like, hey, you want a donut? Oh my God, do you want a donut? And I just like feel like I got fired from Cece's Pizza when I was 15 because I wasn't like, welcome to Cece's enough, because I just can't do that saccharine. I would be very kind to people and bend over backwards, but like, oh, would you like some more cheese? Oh, I love putting, olives on, or not olives, but I love putting cilantro on this pizza and the barbecue, whatever, I would be like that. But then when the taco pizza came out, you were supposed to say, when you put out like the taco pizza on the bar, if you were the one doing it, you were supposed to go 1, 2, 3, and then lead everyone and going, Olay. Like, I would just avoid being the person to put out the taco pizza. I would just like go and clean something. If I saw that there was a taco pizza about to go out on the Cece's Pizza buffet line, I was like, let me go clean the soda machine. I am not, at 15 years old, I just did not have it within me to be like 1, 2, 3, like, and I'm not sure that I do to this day. Like, I just can't. I need to get over myself is really what it is. Hey, would you like a donut? Like, I should have just done that. But then I tried that. I was like, here, do you want a donut? Just looking at the floor. I'm like pretending to hold a donut box, going, hey, you want this donut? And then the guy's like, okay, cut. Okay, good. Okay, so next there's a child in a tree and you're walking by when a child bends their back down, and then you're like, and then offer the donut to that child. I'm like, again, in what spirit am I giving a child in a tree? So I just like, that's the real secret, is for commercials, it doesn't matter what the backstory is, just smile and act like an idiot. Just be like one of those people. Because if you watch commercials, they're all bad. The acting's horrible. And almost all of them, it doesn't make sense. But that's not what they want. They don't want it to make sense. Like, most people aren't, I guess, taken out of it. If I'm watching a commercial, I'm like watching this going, okay, why would that man say that in that tone of voice? Like, he read the script wrong. And like, he doesn't understand that the emphasis should have been on this, or like, that kid wouldn't say it like, but I guess for most people, they're just going, and their brains are just taking in whatever the messaging is. Dunkin' Donuts, pretty people are smiling, Dunkin' Donut. And and so all I'm supposed to do is smile, but historically I have not been able to get over myself enough to just be like, yeah, I love donuts, don't you? Like, so I'm working on it. Like, van life, I think, is going to heal me, and soon I'll be able to mindlessly, unselfconsciously smile and hand imaginary children donuts.
Awesome. I miss my restaurant days. Like when I was 18, well, like from 9 years old to 18, I worked for my parents' restaurant. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started off as a dishwasher and moved my way up. But when I got to 18, my dad fired me. So it's like, I can't believe they fired me from the family restaurant. But it was much deserved though, because I was a jerk when I was 18. I
Yeah,
tried to be a rebel, but
you gotta
that
learn your lesson.
backfired. Yep, indeed. And so, you produced two shows. One was Backyard Sluts, and the other one was Off Script. And what are some of your favorite memories from Backyard Sluts and Off Script?
Oh my God, I have, so many favorite memories. Backyard Sluts was a show I had started doing, I think, in like March of 2019 or something like that, with my good friend Candace Medina, and we were just like, joking around one night about starting a show called Backyard Sluts 9, because it was like that way people would feel like they were missing out, and it worked, like that people would feel like, oh my God, how are we already at the ninth? But we just thought it was funny, just the phrase. I don't know, I don't even, it's like, was just one of those, like, we're drinking and no one even remembers quite what happened, but suddenly we were like, we should make a show called Backyard Sluts 9, and then we realized, like, yeah, and then we'll call the next one 10, 11, 12, and just never say anything. And it's true, because by like the 10th, 11th one, people were like, I saw it. I was like, dude, how did I miss this? Like, but so from our first show, and Candace did such a good job, like, promoting it just on Instagram. She's just being funny and cute. And the show is called Backyard Sluts 9. The first time or two, I guess we the whole thing is like free, but we let people reserve spots on Eventbrite and then just encourage donation. And a couple of hot chicks are at the gate, wearing that. We got Backyard Sluts shirts for them, but they cut it off so you can see a little bit of under boob, but if you get lucky. And so if you have two chicks like that, and it's BYOB, but we always provided some food and drinks too, right? So it's not hard to fill a backyard, with 40, 50, 60, sometimes 80 people. And so, just have a friend with, people who have roommates in a house in a cool neighborhood, and we put up lights and made the show a fun time. And then it's just all these people who, like, have a good sense of humor, obviously, about, and sex themed show, tell the comics, like, do all your sex jokes, please, and then we just create this atmosphere where we're then having like banana eating contests and wet t-shirt contests. And it's very, there's a whole spectrum of gay, gender, queer, all the, people there too. And so everyone who was there just kind of created a community of trust, of like, men and women are both doing, and people, non-binary people, are all eating bananas and getting their shirt, it's that kind of thing. And so at one point people were eating cupcakes off each other's bodies as a contest. We would always do contests. We'd also like Oprah Winfrey style, in the beginning of the show, be like, look under your chair, you never know what might be there. And it might be like a little vodka bottle or a little like spliff or joint. And just, we would encourage everyone to pass the spliffs and joints around. And so, we just created a real fun environment, and we would have these contests. And so, yeah, at one point, girls and boys, but we're eating, I only cared about watching the girls, eating cupcakes out of each other's cleavage and ass in order to win a free t-shirt.
Oh man.
I'm like, thank God I'm a woman, first of all. The people hosting this show are all women. It's one of the many reasons that I would never transition. It's because I'm like, dude, I can get away with a lot of stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe trans men for now can. Trans men have an interesting, like the amount of stuff you can get away with because you're genderqueer and you're trans. People know that, but because you're born female, assigned whatever, you can probably still get away. Like, it's not a bad, it's not a bad. Who knows? Like, yeah, could I get away with hosting a show with eating cupcakes out of your cleavage and your butt cheeks if I transition. Like, that's where I just don't know. I just don't know. So but yeah, so that was really fun, and I hope that we can start it up again. I'm going to be back in August and May, and so there's no reason not to be doing that show, especially now that people are getting vaccinated and all that shit. But it's an outdoor show, and so it's pretty safe. And then Off Script is fun. It's a show I've been doing for a long time at the Fallout Theater. I don't know. I think the Fallout Theater is coming back, so I need to reach out to them too about seeing if I can do that when I'm in town, because it's just really, those two shows are just my favorite thing stand-up wise that I've ever done. I mean, I love a big crowd that's hot room, but Off Script is a show where heckling is allowed and encouraged. I started a show back in the day at the Hideout Theater in Austin, where every week I would have a different theme. And one week was heckling encouraged. One was all crowd work. One was riffing off of topics that you were thrown up by the audience or whatever. And then one was like director's cut, where you do all your worst jokes, whether that's worst because they're too fucked up to say anywhere else or whatever you determine that to be. But and I did all those themes because I wanted to do them myself, to have an excuse to work on all those skills and all those things that scare younger comics, like riffing and crowd work and heckling. I was like, well, if you have this place where you have this permission to do it, where it's weird not to do it, then that gives you just the ultimate permission to experiment and play around. And so those are the shows those are the skills I wanted to build. Always wanted to be more and more present, because I started out stand up very, very, very scripted. And just worked my way out of that. But so with the heckling, that was my favorite theme. And so I kept that one going on at the Fallout Theater. I was doing that once a month. And we got, big crowds for that too, because it's really fun. People love stand-up shows with themes and the kind of people who want to be interactive. I mean, and I would give out prizes to the funniest heckler of each comic. And the prizes were always ridiculous. I had a mystery prize basket, and there would be some sex toys in there. And there would be just some like old, merch from tours that just like, koozies or expired food from my mother's house, because she refuses to throw anything away. She's a crazy Mormon. Anyway, and so used underwear, but that was my request of audience members. And so, so yeah, I like to deliver. If audience members are like, next time, put in some used underwear, I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, come back, Libby. But that show, and comics will sometimes thank me, because they don't realize, a lot of comics who might be quite scripted don't realize how much fun they could have. Or, I've seen comics who are really good also like eat shit at the show, because they just don't know how to get off that. But that's why I call it Off Script. It's like, I want to get anyone who's still on your script off of it. And it just forces you to do that. It's like, it's weird, the comics who try to just be like, and get back to their little set. It's like, no, the point of the show is like, engage. You never know what you might learn about your joke. You never know if someone else, if the audience member might write a tag for you or help inspire you to write something, or something you respond to them will make you realize how to make your joke stronger and better in the future. And so it'd be hard. Oh my God, just thinking of my favorite moments. We've had a lot of people, I mean, like, it's like Trump supporters. Sometimes there's a full row of Trump supporters who are having a bachelorette party, from the suburbs and then surrounded by genderqueers, and it's so fun because, we've had a few problem audience members, but most people get it. Like, this is a space where people can say some shit and like, let the comic handle it. And also the audience can turn on each other. Sometimes we've had it where a dude who was like just a little bit drunk and like such a douche, one of those dudes, the classic, as much as I don't like us all, let's not paint all cis straight white men with some kind of brush, but the classic one where everyone can agree, like, come on, this guy. And so I was like, by the way, to the audience, like, just because he's heckling, like, you can boo him if he says something stupid. And so there's been a time where there was a guy who just like, the whole audience, every time he would try to heckle and he would think he was being funny, but it was just, he would say the most obnoxious things and the audience would just boo. I mean, like a riotous, like Roman Colosseum kind of thing would open. Yeah, but so, and we even had one night that got violent and had to call the cops, but we had some people off their meds, and it's a safe, the audience was safe, but yeah, but things a lot of times we have an audience that's, if anything, like, what's annoying is when an audience is more tame, and then I have to like coach them into being more heckly. Like, sometimes we get one of these just kind of NPR audiences will show up, and then I'm like, oh, where are those Trump supporting bachelorettes, man? That's when the shows really get good. And people after the show just are usually full of really, like, I can't tell you how many people who were like that kind of conservative or smaller town minded kind of people, abortion, whatever, like all the stuff that's mixing around together. And then they just really thank me. They're like, thank you for making this a hospitable place where the audience, where the comics didn't just ridicule us for being Christians or something, you know what I mean? Where they were able to like have a show together. Because I'll also be in the audience. And if a comic is getting a little bit weird or like kind of not understanding the spirit of the show in that way, like sometimes they're like, hey, fuck you, like just like they would to a normal heckler, like, why don't you shut up? I'm there to heckle them too. If a comic needs to be heckled, I'm like, I'm now allowed. Because like, don't you want to heckle comics all the time at shows? Not all the
Always.
time, but like fairly often, especially like if they're an open micer or like a comic who's not, like, sometimes like it would be better to heckle a comic, they need to know their premise is false or something. And so I get to sit there and decide whether I'm finally going to tell some comic, like, heckle them about their false premise. And so, yeah.
Indeed. Those two shows, they would love you so much in Daytona Beach at my homeroom called the Tiernanog Irish Pub. And so if you come through again to Florida, definitely see if you can book your shows at the Tiernanog Irish Pub, because we get crazy there. And they're like, if you get offended by any of these jokes by the comics, there's a bridge down the street you can jump off, and they go crazy.
Oh, no, I love Floridians.
Indeed. And like all the rooms are wide open now, and everyone's still performing stand-up. They're crazy out here. But you've also performed in a couple comedy festivals: Moon Tower, Cloud Top, Laughing Skull. And what were those experiences like?
Well, those are that's a lot of experiences. Moon Tower, I got to do a couple of years because it's a festival in Austin, and it's, they only let in a few Austin comics, but there's always, certainly some. But then on top of us, I mean, the quality at Moon Tower is one of the best festivals in the world. I mean, it's so, and they do such a good job of voices who have been around forever. Like blanking on well, Eddie Pepitone, Dana Gould is who I'm thinking. There's some people who are always there. They have their favorites, like Big Joe Okerson has been there every year that I can think of. I'm sure Tim Dillon will be there soon. I can't believe I'm sure he would. I think Tim was going to be there in 2020 if that had happened. But just, they like the kind of comics who are what I call like real comics, the kind who are fucking funny and not. It's like you hate these. We have to talk in terms of. We can't talk about politically correct anymore, but it's these are comics who are not politically correct. There's people talk about club versus alt scenes, whatever, and it's like, yeah, but that's gotten so complicated now. Different clubs are different ways, different alt scene. There's so many different kinds of alt scenes and whatever. But there's a kind of comedy where people are going to say some real shit, but it's also intelligent and funny. Like you're not the kind of guys who are kind of lifer, low level touring comics who have been saying the same misogynistic, racist, sexist, simple jokes forever. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people at the top of the game who are saying the really interesting but taboo, politically incorrect, whatever just being critical of the culture, being on the edge of all that kind of stuff. Moon Tower just does such a good job of cultivating the freshest voices for the most part. So getting to be a part of that, it's like people call it, comedy Christmas in Austin. To get to be on those shows, to get to hobnob with those people, to be at open bar, wonderful food things where you're wearing an artist badge alongside your heroes. I mean, this is just, this is why we do this. To get to be in a community of people who are hilarious and are shaping the conversation. I think we all love and respect the most and hope and aspire to be a part of the conversation, a part of At least that's how I think of it. You know, part of when I was 16, 17 and discovered stand-up comedy really, and was suddenly listening to Chris Rock and George Carlin and Bill Hicks and everybody, it's like these people, I was still Mormon, and these people were expanding my universe and making me think and laugh and go, oh, my sacred cows can be looked at this different way. And you know, like just change, creating a whole an opportunity for me to get into the world, you know, to get out of my paradigms. And so you know, I think we're all doing the Lord's work. Some of us more than others, but you know, so I just want, but that's what Moon Tower feels like. Just Christmas. And then Cloud Top was a new festival that they started in Santa Fe in at the end of 2019. So I think they're going to come back. It was a wild success, but I got to open for Maria Bamford twice in a row, and among other great shows, but that was the highlight for sure. And I'd met her very briefly before at Moon Tower or something, and but this time, like, I actually got to be like having a conversation, and it's just as you would imagine, nicest person in the world, and just her audience was so wonderful, and this whole festival, like, these people just really, there's people in the world who really love comedy and want to support it, and in a way that's like not really like selfish or anything. They love producing things and they want to support comedians, and that's the Cloud Top was like, people who just want to do these beautiful, good things in the world. And then for them, yeah, of course, they want to get to hang out with Maria Bamford and Fortune Feimster and everybody, you know, like it's all a benefit for everyone. But it's just one of, you know, with these festivals that just win situation for everyone. And, you know, these festivals always want to be able to give accommodations and food and videos and travel if they can, but like they can't really afford all of that for everyone who's not a headliner. But so they were really working on like trying to thread that needle of how to best financially support and whatever, you know, people. And then they asked us at the end of that, because it was the first year again, like, you know, how could we have done better? Like, what would you rather of us spend money on here or there or whatever? And so that kind of festival that just takes that seriously and wants to make sure that they're doing well by the comics, and that's, you know, really cool. Orlando Indie Fest is also like that. I hope they're still going on. And then Laughing Skulls, just, you know, a classic. It's there to, you know, then you have a relationship with the club in Atlanta, and it's just one of those that the industry go to. That's the thing. These are all ones that industry go to. And I don't, you know, and they'll probably continue to go to Cloud Top because they also have a good time. The, you know, parties are good, the whatever. And they can see that Cloud Top is recruiting good people. Like, so, but when there's a first year festival, it's often a good idea for aspiring comics who are at that level, who are wanting to get into the Laughing Skull, Moon Tower. Well, Moon Tower is different. But the Laughing Skull, Limestone, like the used to be Bridgetown, the festivals that are the ones where the industry go to, they will oftentimes go to a brand new festival if the people who are running that new festival are getting good headliners and whatnot, because they like to check out new festivals. And so, but if they have a good time at that, it could become one of the new festivals. And there's some room now to have a handful of festivals at that kind of level. And I'm going to be doing Limestone this year. It would have been in 2020, but that got obviously postponed, and it's going to be interesting to see how that feels after being on the road for this long and then being in Austin for a while. Now Austin is changing, and I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy because I've been so in the woods, literally in the woods, and kind of like a little bit keeping my eye on what's going on in Austin and talking to my friends there, but also knowing as much as I can feel antsy about wanting to be doing stand-up more, and I'm writing, you know, but as much as I can feel antsy about that, I'm like, Arielle, you need to fucking breathe, take a nap, relax, and enjoy this, because I think I'm about to be launching myself into a frenzy of opportunities to be doing a lot of really cool stuff.
Indeed, and so good to know about having headliners come into the festivals that you performed at, because I'm going on 8 years with mine that I produce in Colorado, and so I'm actually I can finally afford to bring some Colorado headliners in and make it like legit, because I usually book my pals, and so now,
Yeah.
like, my buddies are coming through, and I'm like, put me on. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I'm starting at one in Daytona Beach because I wanted to fly all my buddies from Florida to Colorado to perform, but
Yeah.
it was just too expensive, like you said. And so I'm like, why don't I just start another one at my homeroom and just have like a instead of like a bikers week in Daytona, let's have it a stand up week. And it's gonna be like a whole week of stand up. It's gonna be pretty dope. So we'll see how that goes. And you mentioned the Orlando Comedy Indie Fest, and I went in 2018, and I still have the shirts, so they're pretty neat. I missed that.
That might have been when I was there. Yeah, I can't remember if it was 2017 or 2018 that I did that one. Wait, no, I can remember because that was the year that I got divorced. It must have been 2018. Yep. It was the day after I came home from the Orlando Indie Fest that I found out that my wife was like thinking we needed to end our marriage. So
wow.
It's all good. I'm glad it all happened, but it was just very because I had been gone for like 3 weeks to like San Francisco, Portland, and then Orlando. I was like doing this whole comedy thing, and like it's like such a pivotal thing in my life. So it's weird now. Whenever I think of the Orlando Indie Fest, I think of the next 3 weeks.
But hopefully they bring it back because it was like pretty neat to bring see you and like all those shows from across the country be there, like late breakfast. I caught that one. It was so neat. Mm-hmm. And I caught my pal Nathan Lunn there, and he was performing the same year, and it was awesome. And you were also the finalist for Funniest Person in Austin, both in 2018 and 2019. Speaking of 2018, and what was that feeling like?
Well, yeah, I've been doing the contest for a couple years before then and gotten kind of like into semis, but both the first 2 years I did it, I was an alternate in the prelims round. So I had to like message a million people to be like, please vote for me in this thing. Please like my YouTube video, whatever. They changed the rules between years. So it was just like the most stressful thing in 2015, 2016, when I first moved to Austin, was doing it, to be an alternate in the prelims. And then because the first year I didn't make it because someone at the very end suddenly got all these votes anyway. And then the second year I made it on to semis, but then didn't make any. So then by the time in my third and fourth years doing it, I made it to finalists. Like, it's just such a feeling of relief. I feel like I couldn't even enjoy it. Like the contest, and then of course in 2020, had to cancel the contest. And the contest is this huge thing in Austin, and has been historically the Funniest Person in Austin contest, and has helped kind of launch some people, whether you kind of are the winner or not, but just because the finals are something that some industry people will come to, sometimes even some semifinals rounds. So it can be, there's some agents and managers, that kind of thing. And so it can be a bigger thing, but you also can make a really great tape at the contest, and people will come out to the contest who, usually don't go to Cap City that much, or you might not see, like, there'll be some people who are walking in off the street too. There's always a handful of people who don't realize that the rest of us are doing this like a lot, and not just once a year. They just like, I'm the funniest person in town, and they have, they try to do stand up for the first time. That's, beautiful American Idol audition kind of stuff. And then that's amazing to see. And then there's other people who you realize that the rest of the comedy scene doesn't know how funny they are yet, because they do certain rooms that not everybody does, whatever. And to see those people, especially when they're the ones who are like politically incorrect and like they're not doing the kind of woke comedy that a little bit, some of Austin can be a little bit too woke, but just different people are in, again, there's several scenes. And so when those people see someone come in and it's like, damn, see that coming. It's a really fun competition to watch, but when you're competing in, and then everybody, I feel senses of pressure, and it's just not fun. And then so just being like, to have to be like waiting to hear whether it's you or your friends, getting a spot at this thing, getting this validation, whatever, it's just torture for me. It's just such torture. And so finalists, I just like, I hate to imagine what the look on my face might've been, whether it was like a disgusting show of like, okay, I thought I had this, but thank God, because that would have been, or if it just if I looked ungrateful because all I can feel was just simple relief that I don't have to be doing the prelim, doing the what do you call it? The alternate game again, that I can feel validated. I don't know. I just, I would love to say that I enjoy that contest, but I fucking hate doing the contest. Love watching it. But I just have always hated competition. Even as a kid, my sister and I, when we would play games, if it was Guess Who or Stratego or something, we would play often in a way called the friendly way, where it's, instead of doing the competition thing, we're going to play house or school or something. And in that way, sometimes I get confused about my gender identity, but I'm like, man, I'm such a girl. I just want to play for the friendly way. But it's because the other thing is, when I was 8 and we were in PE and we were about to do this like water balloon popping contest or something where you're running at relays, I just had this stark feeling of like, I hate competition so much. The reason I hate competition is because I am so competitive. I am embarrassed by how competitive I am. I hate how much I want to beat other people. And so I'm really not sure whether the healthier thing for me is to lean into competition or try to convince everyone to be cooperative.
Indeed, and I'm not a fan of competitions either, because they're mostly bringer shows, and I don't have anyone to bring along with me to vote for me. So it's like,
yeah, the popularity contest aspect of it is also obnoxious. Like, sometimes someone who doesn't deserve it will go on to semifinals, usually not further than that, but sometimes, someone's friend and family group can really carry them along, because it's not just that the judges are listening and going, that was a lot of claps, I guess they were funny, but also we're all affected by that kind of group think. And when other people are laughing, it's infectious. And so sometimes someone who's only funny at a 7 sounds like they're funny and feels to us like they're funny at a 9, because there's all that going on. And then you start thinking about that. And now you're like, yeah, but I still like that comic. And now I'm having disgusting thoughts cynical thoughts about why they won instead of me. I mean, I don't know. I can't get away from how much I fucking hate what competition. It's like it just feels like playing Monopoly, like what it does to us. Like, that game is kind of fun, or capitalism, like, is it really worth that we all hate our families now? And that's why I'm like, I don't know if there's ways to improve the game to make it, nicer, or if the answer is like just to not do competitions. I don't know.
indeed.
I feel the same way about capitalism as I do about FPIA.
Indeed. And we spoke of Maria Bamford earlier, and she's one of my favorite comics to watch. And what was it like to perform or open for Maria Bamford at Cloud Top?
Well, her audience was really great, although they're a little bit probably more like, not even just like liberal, but kind of like soft-hearted than me. And so the first set I really killed, because I was like doing gender stuff, and I do the stuff that I say, and especially to them, like, I kind of it's going to be edgy, but in a way where I wrote it in myself and I take people along with me. And I only had like 6 minutes or something. We were all doing pretty short sets from here. Maybe I got 8 or something, but so that you have to be pretty like, okay, normally I can kind of build my case and my bona fides before I started on some of my like edgier gender shit. But so I refigured out the order to do it in, so that I could really like get these people along with me for a pretty heady gender ride, because I'm going to say some stuff that is not orthodox. And so that was great. But then in the second one, I tried to get there in probably only like 6 to 8 minutes, to like this whole joke I have about how my girlfriend's abortion is the reason that she has boobs that are like bigger than they could have been. I mean, it's a really great bit. It's my closer if I have the right audience, or enough time to make them into the right audience. But it's my favorite closer that I've ever had anyway. It's often not my closer if I'm like, okay, the audience is not ready for that, or they're all upper middle-aged women, because upper middle-aged women, the ones who didn't have their abortion, it's too sore of a spot for them. They can't be open to the idea of abortion, because otherwise they would have to admit that their lives could have been a lot different if they had just made that different choice. And so they really need to believe that abortion is that bad. And I am sympathetic to that. And so I don't do the abortion boobs joke to women who it makes them too sad. Yeah. But it is true that my girlfriend's boobs are like good mommy. Anyway, but Maria Bamford's audience probably wasn't the best to do for that. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, I wish Maria could have seen me do that bit in front of the right audience, or whether or not, I shouldn't have made that choice, because it's not that I'm sure I was in my head a little bit, but I don't think she probably really like lost respect for me. She said she was like effusive about great set after my first set. And then after the second set, I think she was a little bit like, great set or whatever, because I didn't have time after it went. And look, I'm being hard on myself. It probably was like a B, if I'm giving it a grade, but I just prefer to get an A. And so I'm sure I was in my head about it, but that's the thing about the high risk, high reward lifestyle of opening for your heroes, is that, of course, I'm hard on myself. And so while the first set was so great, the second set then it left me for the rest of the night with a little bit, just enough self-doubt that my testosterone was deflated. So when these hot lesbians were flirting with me after, I probably should have been more aggressive in like seeing if I could go home with them, but I didn't crush the way I wanted to, and so I went back to my hotel room. Yeah.
Indeed. And speaking of short sets, I did performed a short set in Atlanta where this next comic performed his Netflix special, which was at the Relapse Theater, which is Rory Scoble, and one of my favorite sets.
Theater, the Relapse Theater. Mm-hmm.
Indeed, I miss it, and I wish they were still open. And what was that like, opening for Rory Scoble?
That's one of those things in my bio that I'm like very loose, and you're like, oh, I've opened for these people. Like I was on a show with him in LA. I was on Hot Tub and he went after me. And so what was it like was that I did well, but for a hot crowd like that, there was also one little mistake or something that I made, like of error of judgment. And so I would give myself, like a B+ even for that. But it was like the kind where Kristen Shaw afterwards is like saying great set and hugging me in this like a side hug of like, hey, great, whatever. And I'm like she thinks that I'm a younger, newer comic than I am. And so that was a great set for me, but I know that I could have killed harder and that would have whatever, And so then, Rory Scoble gets on there and just like so casually and without trying, just crushes, kills, whatever. It seemed like a lot of new material, just very off the, just, but that was a few years ago. So now like I get that, like I get like just the more I get in my head and anything, then the tighter I'm going to be. And so whatever. And if you just get out and, to him, like he does that show regularly enough that it's just, he's just going to be free and in the moment and whatever. And this was like my first time, and people say this is a big show, and I didn't know what it's going to be like, but I know Kristen Shaw and Kurt Braunholer, host it. So I was in that kind of mindset, the scarcity mindset, really. And so, it's like now I think if I was on a show with him, I'm getting to that point now where I don't feel like because I got to open for Tim Dillon in January of last year in Vegas, and like, and that I remember watching myself because I'm like trying to get to the point where I can be chill around people that I truly admire. And I'm finally kind of getting grounded and centered in that and in my self-esteem and everything. But at the time I couldn't, I'm not going to go talk to Rory after that or anything. Like he probably wasn't even paying attention during my set or, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, he killed. That's how it happened.
Awesome. And you were also on the same bill as Jackie Cation. And what was that, working with Jackie?
Well, that's one of the, it was like, yeah, on the same bill. That was one of the, with the lesbians who are divorced now, Cameron Esposito's show with Rhea Butcher, Put Your Hands Together. That's what, another LA show that I've done a couple times. And I'm trying to remember. I think Jackie Cation and Pete Holmes were on the first time that I did that show. And that went really great. Pete went first, and so he didn't see my set because he was rushing off to do another set. But then Jackie was like closing out the show, but she was also there from the beginning or near the beginning or something. And so we were talking backstage as well. And she's just super chill and easy to talk to, and just down to earth and as can be. And so that was great. And then I I can't remember if she was on like right after me, maybe, because I definitely remember her like commenting something about my set, because people tend to comment after my sets because I'm kind of, whether I'm talking about, scissoring or trans shit or whatever, like I'm going to be talking about something that worth commenting on. And so just when you're, hearing someone like famous and cool and smart and funny talking about what you're talking about, and you just realize, this is going to be like a weird analogy, but my girlfriend has become a bird watcher, and she like really, really loves birds. And then I was reading this book called like How to Do Nothing, and she was a birder, and she was talking about like watching these birds that are like regulars at her park, and like suddenly realize, and like looking, one of them's looking back at her, and and it was like, this is so dumb and weird, but like it blew my mind because I thought about it, and then I went and like actually like looked at a bird and had an interaction with it. It's like, it didn't occur to me on some fundamental like deep conscious level of consciousness that like a bird could be affected by me. A bird, like, it's like that's nature happening over there, and then here's me, and the fact that like I could affect a bird's day, it's like its little consciousness or whatever, it could be aware of me, and like and it seems like this kind of thing to me, like sometimes you just realize that on some kind of level of consciousness, celebrities feel like that level of real world, and you feel like a different one. And so just getting to that level of consciousness where me and the birds and Jackie Cation and Tim Dillon and Eddie Pepitone and everybody are all just part of the same thing together. It's so dumb and simple, but like, you have to believe that on every level of your consciousness and not just intellectually. And so somehow, like looking at a bird the other day, looking at me, just, you know what I mean, seems of a piece to this kind of thing of like realizing just how we just get trapped in our own weird, whatever this weird ego thing is.
Indeed. And you mentioned that Pete Holmes was on the same show as you and Jack, and what was that like? Was he, how was he like I love him in Crashing, but what's he like in person?
Yeah, I love Crashing too, and I love his podcast. You Made It Weird, and I love his podcast. We Made It Weird, when he talks to his wife. Like I really, really love him, and he and I just vibe about like our musing about the nature of the universe and how to live a good life and the spiritual seeking. And we're just, similarly both have, conservative religious backgrounds and are divorced and whatever. And so, but I never really seen his stand up. And there's a lot of comics where it's like, just like with Joe Rogan, like, everybody has some good stand up, but like, I care more about other things Joe Rogan brings to the table than his stand up typically. And that's kind of how I would feel about people. And but so with Pete, I'd like maybe seen a little bit on the internet, but you know what, the internet clips, you never know if that's really the stuff that makes it on to things. There's so many weird reasons for comedians, and if you don't see them live, it's just, you just don't get it. You're just not going to get. And so that's my thing. It's like I can say that about Joe Rogan or Pete Holmes, but until you see them live, I don't need to have an opinion about every comic. And so seeing him, or well, like listening to him from backstage because I was going next, then he he's of course doing the show just like, to start his night too. It's at 8:00 and he's going to go off to other sets. And so for him, again, it's kind of like with Rory Scovel doing Hot Tub, these people are just putting sets in, not just putting sets in, but just doing sets. And so it's not like, on the show. And so I'm just listening to him be like very free and doing mostly old material, but also mostly new material, but also folding in little thing that I heard him say on this podcast. And I can see that he's playing with that. And to just be, he's so like loose and fun and free. And the environment that he creates with his audience, even, this is even his audience. This is an audience who's come for all kinds of reasons to put your hands together, but they vibe well. But to watch how he just creates the environment that he wants to play with in the things that he wants to talk about, and the ways he wants to talk about them. It's that masterful thing that happens when a comic has been doing it for a long time and they know how to do that and to make it into his show. And even, just even doing, whatever it was, 12 minutes or whatever. And he did that, and so that is really, really cool. And that's another one of those times because I've been that comic too, who comics we're all sitting around, we want to, Joe Rogan's not even that funny or whoever, like these people are so famous and they're not even, and it's like I've had strong opinions before, and then yeah, you see someone live, and so there's really like, yeah, there's really no reason for us to all have a lot of the opinions that we have strongly. Everyone, like, it's so easy. We all just form these opinions with so little information, and we should really just like drop a lot of the opinion having, at least until we get some good info. So the good info that I have now is like Pete Holmes. I just would have at some point, if I'm being honest, at some point been like, yeah, I don't really like Pete Holmes stand up. It's not that funny, whatever. And it's like that. I don't even care that much, by the way, about stand up being funny. I know that's a heresy, but I don't like. You need to have my attention, but I don't give a shit if Hannah Gatsby is funny. And it's so nice for like a similarly Asperger's-y lesbian to give us all permission to not have to be that funny sometimes. I mean, not that I still don't have it within me yet to just give a TED talk. Like I probably would be great at it, but I don't, I'm still like, but I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit whether I was always laughing when I was listening to George Carlin. There were probably long stretches when I wasn't laughing out loud. It's hard to get me to laugh out loud, but I want you to hold my brains, like say something interesting. And that's a slippery slope. You don't want to, in the wrong hands telling certain comics, you don't need to be funny. Like I get why we don't want to let that information out, but like, there is a truth to it. I just want to hear interesting ideas in a way that, that fine line between preaching and comedy too, Yeah, can't even remember what question we're on.
You're fine, and I totally agree. And it's nothing like seeing them live, because the edited stuff that doesn't make it to their special is just like, oh, I wish I could have seen it live. But we spoke of Kristen Shaw earlier, and what was that like being on the same bill with Kristen?
Well, that was her hosting her hot tub show, and so she's just delightful and is just this warm presence and a wonderful host, and so that was all just great. And then before the show I did get to talk to her, and again, like you could see, especially at the time, I was quite less sure of myself. This was my first time doing comedy in LA, and I was doing all these shows, and it was really great, but I was a little bit intimidated, and yet, so that's a testament to how warm and welcoming and open she was, that it was easy for me to talk to her. It was pretty easy. Like, and then some people up there were like talking about sperm donation or something anyway. So that was easy for me to jump in and be like, oh, I have some, did you guys know that how these catalogs work with, showing pictures from their childhood or whatever? And that's kind of another little Asperger's shy kid thing. If we stumble on a topic that I have something to say about, like, then it's so much easier for me to jump in. But that's the other thing. I'm so hard on myself, like about my self-esteem and talking to these people. I'm like, I am like Asperger's, whether people, believe that or not or whatever, like it's harder for me. And I think that's also with the gender stuff, the gender and the Asperger's there's a lot of overlap. And I think, it's hard to say where one ends and begins, because part of it is, how do you feel comfortable, or do you feel comfortable in a room? Like, I know how to relate to these people. And if I'm talking to one person, I can just kind of be whatever gender they are. I prefer to kind of mirror people. But if that's just natural to me, I don't know. But if I'm in a mixed group, I need the microphone, and I'll tell you what kind of gender we're being, or I'll play off of your energy anyway as a group. But that's even mixed audiences with stand-up can be weird. But certainly once you have more than 3-4 people in a social situation where you're standing in a circle or at a table with 6, 7, 8, 9 people, I don't know how to be a coherent, integrated person, because there's too many genders around, and there's too many kind of ways of being. And so that kind of Asperger's-y, gendery stuff, unless I'm in a room full of other medium gender Asperger's people, it's really hard for me to figure out how to socially relate. It just feels like I'm playing 9 different games of double dutch in my head with like who I am or how to be, if that makes sense. But Kristen Shaw was easy to talk to.
Indeed. And you were also on the bill with Dulce Sloan. I believe that's how you pronounce
Dulce. Yeah. Well,
Dulce.
And again, that's just website stuff. She was in the Out of Bounds Comedy Festival is also really great in Austin and has been getting better and better. So if that comes back, which I hope it will, then that was a really great festival and also getting better and better headliners. And so it was just cool. A lot of amazing people on that. And So yeah, I'm trying to remember the name. There's another woman who was like a headliner who we happened to get into a conversation, and I was debating whether adding to leave my name as Arielle Norman or start going with Arielle Isaac Norman. And she like gave me the advice that if I was going to do it, I needed to do it now. So like she, and she was like, she kind of seemed to be on the side of like, I think that sounds cool. You should do it. So this person who was pivotal in this life decision I made, I'm like, I can't remember who that was, but she's like really great and funny and successful and famous. But anyway.
Indeed, and you were also on Share the Stage with other awesome comics, and which ones stand out the most in your mind?
Just in all the shows I've ever done with all the comics.
Yep, like the varying levels of fame, if you will.
God, I think anyone who's done comedy with Sam Talent, I'm sure mentions him all the time. He's just amazing and masterful and just so funny, and someone who doesn't get as much. But I think Doug Stanhope, there you go, was just on Joe Rogan and like gave Sam Talent's book to Joe. So hopefully that'll blow up for him. But I haven't been listening to Joe Rogan since he got on Spotify because I just don't get on Spotify for a podcast. I don't know. But I'm sure I'll eventually give in. Brene Brown's on there too. I'm like, I love you both. And I'm at the intersection of people where both Joe Rogan and Brene Brown moving to Spotify has changed my life. And I no longer listen to them because I'm too lazy to use 2 apps for podcasts or whatever. I have a system with my Apple Podcasts. They don't understand what they're doing to us. I can't. How many fucking apps as it is. But anyway, I don't know. I knew you were gonna like kind of ask about some of my favorite comics. I'm like, I have been so like out of thinking about it that I would be hard. I mean, just Roy Williams Jr. I've just been to a show at Cap City in Austin, Cap City Comedy Club, but I haven't worked with him. But I mean, just he's one of those people where don't sleep on the opportunity to go to see him. But yeah, I mean, Tim Dillon is my favorite comic in the country now, as he is for an increasing amount of comics and people in general. And his podcast is just my favorite thing every week. I could listen to him talk about nothing for hours. His ads are funny. They were often, just, if anybody doesn't listen to Tim Dillon yet, because it was during the Epstein stuff that I started listening to his podcast, which was the best time to do it. And, at one point he was doing an ad for some kind of CBD products. And then he was like, yeah, they have CBD lube now. Just imagine how much better it would have been for his Epstein's victims if he'd been using CBD. I'm like, these fucking sponsors are paying him. And he clearly told them like, I'll do your ads, but you're going to let me say anything I want to. Like, look, you can, and so you get a contract with these people for a few episodes or however long, and they're just like, yeah. And I'm sure I'm sure that like some people are buying products they don't even care about just to support Tim Dillon and him doing those ads. I want to buy stuff just so that he always is doing this, because that's what you want to do. Because like if you're doing a podcast and you want to make money and you want to have sponsors, like you just don't want to sell out, and it's like you want that to be the thing. It's like, I will do your ad for bald hair trimmers, but like obviously I'm going to say whatever I want to about bald hair trimmers. I can't just smile and hand your people donuts,
Indeed. Most definitely. And let's see here. Speaking of when you mentioned Joe Rogan switching to Spotify, I stopped following him. I missed him on YouTube like big time, and now I guess Kanye West is his boss because Kanye bought Spotify. I guess.
Did he? I didn't.
Yeah, I read it on a Forbes article. I guess it's real.
Now?
But, yeah, because he's a billionaire now. It's bonkers. But yeah, Tim Dillon. Like I love seeing him as guests on podcasts too. And what was it like when he told you great set?
Yeah, I think I added that to my bio because I'm like, that's because anybody who likes Tim Dillon would then they'd like me. I think it's he's not the kind of comic who's going to say great set to someone who didn't have a great set. And I was just like worried before that because I can high pressure situations can sometimes not bring out the best in me. And so I had been, a little bit worried before opening for him. Like, what if, even with this amazing audience that Ty Rivera has set up, who are Tim Dillon kind of people who, even in this great room that's hot, what if I get in my head and fuck it up, in front of Tim Dillon? And so I had to just kind of be in this like Zen place where it's like, we're not going to go there. We're just going to be present. You're going to be, and so I did have a good set. I mean, I would still, I have my little criticisms and give myself an A- or maybe a 97, but those 3 points mean more to me, or whatever, something like that. But I did crush it. And I made some, fun, good, bold choices of what material to do and everything. And so I knew Tim meant it. And it's still, because I've been maybe slightly awkward in the green room beforehand, just trying to be like, he's talking with his person and Ty, and they're all comfortable, and I'm probably being a little bit quieter, and so are the other comics, so he doesn't know what to think. But I'm just like, I knew, I'm like, I can't bring it in myself to just be like, hey, what's up, man, I love your podcast. Like, I don't even know what myself would even be in the context of that interaction. And so I knew that I needed him to see me do stand up before I could even like try to be myself. And then he wasn't really like hanging out that much after. I mean, like, I got my picture with him, and someone was like, hey, everyone who was on the show, we want your picture, because I would never have asked. I don't, so it just felt, it's like one of those beautiful moments of validation in your life, and just again a sense of relief too, because I had been worried that I would fuck it up. And so it just felt like a really good, solid set, and a good, solid, staying out of my own way. And yeah, so then he said, good set, great set, or whatever it was, great set. Great set.
Awesome. And for this episode, we're raising funds for GiveWell. And why did you pick GiveWell to raise funds for those fine folks?
I'm one of the people that Peter Singer, won over with his argument, moral philosopher, among other things, who, kind of gives you the thought experiment of, if you were walking through the forest and there's a child drowning in some water, and you knew that you could go and easily save that child, but it would ruin your shoes, and imagine that you're wearing your nicest pair of shoes, would you go in and save the child? And of course you would. And so no matter who you are, whatever your pair of shoes is, it was like your grandfather's pair of shoes that he gave to you and he died anyway. But so, if I don't know what my nicest pair of shoes, I guess I have running shoes that are $120 or something. So then shouldn't you give at least that much to save children, knowing that, for $1 a day or whatever it is, we can actually save lives through malaria nets or medication, whatever, or food, this, that, or the other. There's people who are poor enough that, and so it's the thought experiment is great, but at the same time, it's like, well, then do I give $120 every time I would buy a new pair of shoes, which is every few years or what? But it doesn't matter. The point is, are you giving anything? And then he set up he and a lot of other people, but like or maybe he just promotes it, I don't even remember, but this GiveWell thing is, people have smart, like economisty, mathematical, whatever, sciencey minded people have looked into which charities are doing the best work in terms of efficiency for your money. Where are we going to do the most like systemic good, not taking overhead, and really like saving and improving lives. And so I know that it doesn't matter what happens to pulling my heartstrings, because I see a commercial about this, that, or someone I know died of it. I'm like, that's fine if that works for you, it gets you to give at all. I'm not making fun of that, but it's just like, for me, I would rather just give to, if these little economist people have determined that we can save the most people through malaria stuff. Malaria is not a sexy thing, like it doesn't, that's got a sexy word though, and malarial, I could do one of my name things, but it doesn't, I probably wouldn't be most inclined to give to that, but they have an option even at GiveWell where they say, because you can choose between all their like top 12 rated charitable situations, or you can tell them, you just do what you think is the best with this money. And also however much you want to give, if you want it to be recurring, if you want it to be a one-time thing. But if you have your 2 mites that you can give, do that, because $2 actually is enough to help people in other places. And so start now. And then maybe when you get a raise, you realize you can give more. Like, whether you're a socialist, communist, anything, like you're in America, you can give more. We can get more. We can all give more. And if you're going to give more, give well. I don't know if that's their tagline, but GiveWell.org.
Indeed, most definitely. And we're 18 minutes or 19 minutes past the hour mark, and I want to be
So,
respectful of your time and because you have such an incredible comedy journey, and from what I've seen from what I've read, and so we can go to the usual questions that I ask all the comics I've interviewed. That's like 600 on my YouTube channel, or we can fast forward to the final sequence, which is up to you.
let me do a lightning round of your regular questions.
Okay, sounds good. So what inspired you to perform stand-up comedy?
The comics I mentioned before, yeah, George Carlin, Bill Hicks, Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Jeff Foxworthy, Ellen, Paula Poundstone. I mean, it just goes on, but I was listening to that stuff when I was 16, 17, a pivotal point in my life. And it's just the best thing. Stand-up comedy is the best thing. So I have to do it. And at some point I hoped, and then that's how my brain works. I'm a devil's advocate, and I like when things are really funny, and my brain sometimes says things funny and turns things funny, and it just feels like what I'm on earth to do. And I ran away from that for a long time. And then I finally started really when I was 27 and a half. And once you start, it's just like, well, you can't go back from this. I mean, if you're meant to do it, a lot of people aren't meant to do it, and you should stop or enjoy the community, whatever, do what you want with your life.
So true. I'm 8 years in myself, like 6 years consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see here. What was it feeling like when you first performed stand up?
What was it feeling like?
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to say when I first performed stand up because I did it 4 times when I was 23. Orlando, Dallas, New York, and kind of like it's too long of a story. And the very first time I did it when I was 23, though, I was extremely prepared. And I crushed, but it was in an open mic with like 70 people crammed into a cafe, and most of the people who were getting on stage were dumb and crazy, and so and certainly not prepared, drunk, whatever they were, and here I was doing it for the first time, and like this is everything I cared about. Like I'd already been running away from it for years, but I didn't even know you could do open mics or stand up until that age anyway. But I had a lot in my ego riding on it, and I prepared very hard, and it went quite well. But I wasn't, even present enough for that. But when I took a class when I was 27 and a half in order to force myself to do it, and I had heard from my friend who took the class that I had asked him, I'd grilled him about what would happen because I wanted to know if I was going to get on stage. I was just too nervous. Like, what if he just pulls me on stage? And then I just, my fucking ego. And so my friend Owen told me that he was like, oh yeah, you like get on stage. You do like a minute, your first thing. And so I prepared the 60-second bit. I mean, I wrote it, I worked on it. I practiced it with a hairbrush in front of the dog and cat. And I was so prepared for the 60 seconds. And my friend was running the class too. Like I'd known him for years. I'd love to bump him. And so I'm just nervous. I'm like pooping extra that day and all day until the class gets together at 7 or something, and then we're all going around and introducing ourselves and talking, and it's all just like mic stand, and then he's like, Rob's like, okay, so now we're each going to get on the stage and we're going to do it for a minute. We're going to talk for a minute. Just because we're going to be getting a light. A lot of times it's a 1 minute light. And just so you know what 1 minute feels like. Now, I don't want you to try to be funny. Don't try to tell any jokes or anything. Just talk for a minute and just see what it feels like. And so now I realize like what an asshole I would be if I launched into a 60-second memorize. That was my plan. And so I just had to just talk. And so I got on there, and what I talked about was I admitted to them that I had written this thing knowing about the 60 seconds. And I just talked off the cuff about how I had grilled my friend and how I'd practiced in front of the dog and cat. And of course I got a bunch of laughs because I was just, being, and that was, and then it would be years of me like doing open mics and being rehearsed and scripted and whatever. And then finally like getting high on stage and like starting the journey to being freer. But that first time in my stand-up class in front of 12 people, when I was telling them what my plan was, that was that itself is a addicting, hooking thing.
Most indeed. And you mentioned some of your favorite comics that inspired you to perform stand-up in the first question. And what are your favorite comedy specials and comedy record albums?
Oh God, like Chris Rock's stuff in the 90s, probably whatever the 96 out. I don't really remember names of albums that well, but Ellen's Here and Now special on HBO, almost everything Louis C.K.'s ever done. Natasha Leggero's early stuff, especially. I love all of her stuff, but I fucking love Natasha Leggero. And yeah, so Chris Rock's, what is it, Bigger and Blacker, or there's a couple of them in there. Every Doug Stanhope album. I mean, yeah, and Bill Hicks, there's another one where I don't care whether I'm laughing. You just tell me what's going on in the world, you know. Yeah, I'm not really good at comedy, and I don't listen to it nearly as much as I should. Or, you know, for years it was too painful to listen to stuff, and now I do. But yeah, Roy Wood Jr.'s, most of his stuff is awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. And a lot of those folks are on TV and film, and I want to know what your favorite sitcom, sketch shows, and comedy films are.
Oh God, sketch shows. All the sketch shows are always just like so hit or miss. But what are the one? I mean, the Chappelle Show, I guess it's coming back, right? But or maybe he's just, I don't, it's just streaming again or something. But that was great. I'm not a Key and Peele. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I'm trying to think of, what are sketch? I don't watch that much TV. So I'm like sitcom. I don't know that I could even. Modern Family, is that a sitcom?
I'd say so.
Yeah, I really like them. I really like The Office and Parks and Rec, and you know, that stuff. It's, you know, those shows are so well written, and you can just watch them and it just feels good. But yeah, I'm not too big. Most TV stuff is going to be hard for me.
Indeed. And comedy films?
God, we were just watching Coming to America, like the original, for the first time last night, and I fell asleep because I fall asleep, you know, 45 minutes into every movie that I've ever tried to watch past 8 p.m. But it's just so wild. Like, I'm not going to say that's my favorite, but it's just like, Jesus Christ, I had no idea what they were up to in this movie. I think I was too like jaw open to even be laughing. So I remember thinking, like, in a different mood, I think I would be laughing, but I'm just like, oh my God. Comedy movies, I just don't. I feel like I have a bias where it's rare for movies to be as funny as good stand-up, and so it's like, who even cares? But some of them are good. I mean, even like Bridesmaids, like that was good. Some of them are just like the random ones that if you watch when you're in the right mood. There's one maybe where there's a couple of cops. It's like two comedians are playing cops, and maybe Will Ferrell and. Do you know what I'm talking about? Maybe, that Mark Wahlberg. I think that's.
I know which one you're talking about, but it's like skipping my brains.
Yeah, I just remember I watched that. You know, if you watch something with the right people, you know, you get. I think like I like those, but so often, whether it's sketch or comedic films, I'm just not. I don't know. They don't always translate.
Most definitely. And but once it comes to my brain, I'll come to my brain for sure. And let's see here. If you're on the
some SNL is amazing, and then other SNL, you're like, what is happening to our whole world? You know, but yeah.
Indeed. And if you're in the van life now, if you can go on tour with any comedian locally and internationally known, which comedians would you have to go on tour with?
Local or national, who would I like to go on tour? I think it would be really fun to go on tour with Big J Ogerson. Like, I think I would be. I think Tim Dillon wouldn't like me as much as I wish he would, but I think Big J Ogerson and I would be like father-daughter twins together. He's someone who, like, he and I have several bits where we share the same perspective on something, essentially. But like, and it was like the first time I did Moon Tower, I saw him for the first time, and I was just like, oh my God, no one would even like think of us as like joke thievery or anything between us having like kind of the same perspective. It's just because we're coming from the perspective of like a big dude and a small lesbian, you know. No, I'm not that small, but you know, compared to him, but you know what I mean? Like, we look so different and seem so different that no one would, you know, and not just that, but our perspective is, he's talking about like wishing his daughter were a lesbian, you know, so our perspectives are so different that like it doesn't read as like the same jokes. So when I'm just saying, like, we cover the same topics sometimes in ways, but I had never heard him, you know, like it was just like he and I are both talking about like these same dynamics, and so just to find someone like that who couldn't like seem more different than me. But I'm like, if people understood, you know, people compare me to Ellen and Tig Notaro a lot, which is great. I love both of them, and that's an honor. And I am similar to them in certain ways, for sure. But I'm way more similar to Big J Ogerson than I am. But people just don't see that because they're like, lesbian, you know, gender queer. And so I think he and I would get along swimmingly. The times I've like semi, I've been in the same room with him, or I was, was too intimidated at the time to. It's like, but once he sees me do stand up, then I think he would easily come over and approach me. He seems like that, like where he would then be like, oh, like you and I should talk. And that's the thing, like, isn't the point of being like famous, successful, loved, so that then you can just be like openly kind and generous and whatever to other people? Isn't it like that the best part of it is that you could then be the cool famous person?
Yep.
That's the whole that's my desire anyway.
Indeed.
I want to tell those stories about me where they're like, and she was the nicest. I hope I can always do that.
And local comic?
Oh, and a local comic? Dude, probably Mikey Swinson. He maybe is the funniest person in Austin. In any given night, there are about 6 people in the running for that, I guess. But he can be a little bit. He just wants to break the rules for the sake of breaking the rules, and sometimes he doesn't. It's not always intelligent about that. He's still pretty young, sometimes he's in a weird mood or a weird chemical state, and that's not like. So I wish that he were more disciplined, and I'm hoping that he's coming into that. And people can have different opinions of him because of his past, or because which I don't even know of anything that he did. But people can get political in Austin, and so he's a contested figure, I guess. But when he is on, he is so funny, and he's got fresh perspectives. I mean, there's stuff where like famous comics have. I don't know if they've stolen his bits. He has some evidence or whatever, but he's doing bits better than some famous comics who kind of do the same, and some good comics, not just famous and like they shouldn't be like people who are like skilled, good, respected comics. I love his bits better. And he's someone who in Austin, after a few years, you get to the point because most of the good comics moved to LA and New York so quickly. Now they're coming back. So the talent level was at a place where eventually it's harder and harder to feel inspired and to be like learning and growing from your peers as you climb the ranks in there. But he's someone who, I'll still go to shows and I'm like, he's making me be higher level, because if I'm going to follow him or whatever, he and I were in Houston together, a year ago, and I remember that kind of thing. Like, oh, like if I'm going to have him open for me, a lot of people will have me be the headliner over him because I have better credits. And on some nights, I'm definitely the headliner over him. But there's other nights where I'm like, oh fuck, he's going to bury me if I don't now I got to really bring it. And that's what you want is to, and so I mean, he's someone who I would easily prefer probably to switch off who's the headliner and who's the feature. So I can, have some pressure off, because when he's being funny, it's like genius level stuff on a good night.
Indeed. And if you can get roasted by 5 comedians, past and present, which comedians would you like to get roasted by?
Oh God, no one ever roasts me. Okay. Like even I've been on roast shows and people still, they just are like, mayonnaise sandwich or something, like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's like white people lesbian jokes that are like vague, and I'm like, I don't know if it's because I don't, like people are assuming that I would be too weak to handle it, and I'm like, would I be too weak to handle it, or if no one cared? I don't know what it is, but but I would like to think that I would love being roasted by like Tim Dillon, by who are the Lisa Lampanelli, like let her have a crack. I would love to know what people actually, so I want it to be like the toughest comics. Isn't it, is it Nikki Glazer or which of the women? Sometimes I get all those women confused. There's like 3 of them. But is it Nikki who's like really good at roasting? Let's put Pete Holmes on there, because he's apparently really good at roasting too, and it would be fascinating to me to see what he would say. Is that 4?
Yep.
How about that puppet guy? I don't know.
Like Jeff Durham or
Jeff Dunham. Yeah, let's let him do it. I don't know. It's just random comic comes to mind. Everybody loves Jeff Dunham so much. Like I spend a lot of time around the demographics of people who just like he's one of the 2 comics they've ever heard of and love him. And so I'm like, well, I would finally watch his stand-up if it were.
Indeed. And what do you see your comedy journey in the next 5 years?
God, I don't know if I like want to jinx myself, but I'm just gonna, I'm about to come back to Austin, and the scene is revving up, and Joe Rogan's gonna do his little hill country club, and other clubs are, and so I just want to be doing a lot of comedy in Austin, and touring around. I need to get into the club system, but I'm just like too Asperger's-y to figure out how to write an email. I know I can write a Facebook message being like, hey, can I come headline your show, and can I sleep on your couch? Um, but I need to get an agent, or like, it's like my thing is I can't do the interpersonal stuff, and things like that. And so I'm trying to figure out how to become like a really touring comic, and but I don't know, but at the same time I like having so much freedom, so I just want to be able to be free, and doing a lot of stand-up in Austin and around the country, and maybe the world, traveling internationally, sometimes doing podcasts, sometimes doing film projects, like just being able to kind of, when I'm in Austin or places, for a while, I can do little projects and then just stand up podcasts. I don't need to make that much money, but if I can increasingly make a little bit more money, a little mailbox money, whatever, just living a really free life, and running. My girlfriend's an ultra marathon runner, and I'm trying to become one too. But it's harder for my body, but I'm working on it. And so just being able to travel around, and live like a really natural, healthy lifestyle. And hopefully if I could get like, if we could find like 4 more wives, that would be really tight, or so. And then we could raise kids, but I could just, only be like a 6th of a parent. That's what I'm hoping.
Indeed. And which other forms of comedy would you venture off into? You've done acting, etc. So like improv, sketch, comedy writing, directing.
Yeah, I've done all of that. Even improv a little bit. But I've just done it all kind of a little bit. I wrote a sketch a couple years ago with a friend who called They're On First, and it's like this Abbott and Costello like a take on Who's on First, but it's this entire it's a baseball or softball, we're not really sure, team full of non-binary people who all have they them pronouns, and then it turns out that all their names are some variation of Caden ultimately. And so we just like kind of redid that. And so I kind of didn't realize it was happening, but by the end of it, I was like, oh, I wrote and directed or co-directed, because like the film guy's there, but then I find myself like doing some direction, and co-produced, and co-starred in this production. So I'm like, oh, that's how you become a writer, director, producer, actor. Like you just do it. And so yeah, I'd already, like I said, done some kind of acting stuff, and obviously with stand-up there's writing in various ways. But so yeah, I've done that. Now I have more people that I'm collaborating on with, for other projects, and I just want to be able to do those for like a few months in the summer, and then I don't know, I think we should all be taking more time off than we are. I think that, like, my girlfriend and I call it 6-day Sabbaths, as in like, how about we go 6 off, 1 on? I think it turns out that God wants to be worshipped more than once a week. It's pretty selfish of us. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Indeed. And what is your favorite joke a comic has written?
Oh God, I will not be able to think of my favorite joke a comic has written, but I do remember reading an article about, maybe it was Louis C.K. being interviewed about a favorite comic of his who had died or something. I really can't even remember who said this, but whoever this comic was quoting another comic about this joke that they remembered of theirs, about how the guy was like, sometimes you put the gun in your mouth and then the metal of the gun kind of tickles your metal what do you call the tooth filling, your metal filling, and it gives you that funny little, and then it kind of pulls you out. I can't even remember the joke. It's something about how like that feeling, that silly feeling, pulls you out of the moment and you don't kill yourself, or I don't know. But that's the joke that came to mind when you said like, what's my favorite joke? And I think it's because it was somebody else's favorite joke. And but that's a good example of, I just want your joke to be dark and upsetting. Yeah.
Indeed. And what experience would you like your audience to take with them after a set is over?
It depends on the set, like whether it's off script or backyard sluts or like my regular set. But like right now I would say I have an hour on gender, but if anything, I probably have 2 hours on gender and need to cut it down if I want to do that. Some people are doing 90-minute shows now. My first special is a 90-minute. But so if it's a gender show, then it depends on whether this is like a liberal city crowd or a rural conservative crowd. But I want a conservative crowd to walk away going, oh, I didn't know that someone who looks like her and lives some of the lifestyle stuff that she does I didn't know that they could also share these perspectives with me or joke about the same stuff I do with even some of the same perspective, or to not take this or that too seriously, and that maybe we all have some more in common than we think. And that one's pretty cool, and I want a more liberal, more woke audience to walk away going, you know what? I had never really thought of some of those things that way before. And I wouldn't have, and I found myself laughing about some stuff and thinking some thoughts that I'd never thought out loud. And maybe there is some more that I haven't fully investigated in my thinking about some of this gender stuff.
Indeed, most definitely. And Arielle, you're part of the stand-up speakeasy now, and it's a secret society of stand-up comics. It's the Prohibition, the Roaring Twenties. It's you got to know someone to know someone. And with that being said, Arielle, which Austin comics would you like to see on a future episode of the stand-up speakeasy?
Well, you should talk to Mikey Swinson. Like I said, he's someone who I think is really cool. And Candace Medina, my Backyard Sluts co-host. She's great. One of my favorite comics in Austin is Liz Spears, or I think she still goes by Elizabeth Spears on stage, but on TikTok she's Liz Spears, and she just started, in these quarantine times, doing her own little style of being funny on TikTok. And I think TikTok is mostly stupid, and it's usually embarrassing when people in their 30s, she might not quite be in her 30s, I'm not sure, but are trying to be on TikTok suddenly, and I include myself in that. But she does a really great job of just being differently. She just does her own thing, and that's something I love. When you said, like, also what's your favorite jokes, I was like, oh my God, I know there are some jokes of Liz Spears that I wish I had written. So she's just full of them, and she is just, she's really cool. So with those people.
Awesome. I'll be sure to reach out to all of them, and I might need your help on their spellings because sometimes I reach out to the wrong people. I'm like, whoops. So, with that being said, please follow Arielle on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Her website is scrolling below as well, and donate to her Cash App, Venmo, and GiveWell as well. And there's also multiple web links that I couldn't fit into the ticker because it only gives me so much. But they're all below, and like from your podcasts and all that stuff. So there's additional links below.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like sometimes I'm funnier in some contexts than I am in others. Sometimes I'm just being like more sincere. I'm usually being funny too, and I hope that translates. But but I have more to say than I can just fit into like stand up and things. And so I've also been on Medium more and writing things. So if anyone's interested in my socio-political thoughts. Yeah.
Indeed. If you like, shoot me the link for your Medium link, and I'll put that in post-production too. And so, with that being said, Arielle, are there any final words you'd like to give out to the audience at home?
I think if you're listening to this, you're already probably pretty cool and open-hearted, and so let's just all be kind and go to comedy shows. I think that comedy is going to save the world. I think it is saving us, and so the comedy is the answer. So support your local comedy shows and Patreons of our podcasts.
Absolutely. I'll be sure to put your Patreon on there too, so people can donate as well. And for everyone else, for the Stand Up Speakeasy, myself and Arielle, thank you all so much for joining us and for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Be safe and take care of each other. Be well.
Thanks, Sarah.